I remember if things were low fat, you could have as much as you like as well, which was
Mm.
also brilliant because my mum would make rice pudding with skimmed milk and we
Uh,
could put jam in it because that's
mm,
low fat.
right.
And you could get a low fat yogurt and stick jam in it. Pretty much anything low fat and then stick jam on it was just brilliant. But it wasn't working. I wasn't losing weight. And then you'd go to the doctors or the dietitians and they would say, well, she's clearly getting the food from somewhere because she's
Mm,
still gaining weight. So you would have always had this sense of it was my fault. I'm definitely wrong.
right.
That kind of feeling.
Today, my guest is Ellen Bennett. She is a registered dietitian. She is a researcher and addiction-informed practitioner specializing in ultra-processed food addiction. She is the founder of the Liberate program and works with a public health collaboration to advance education and clinical awareness around food addiction and metabolic health. Her research includes published feasibility and behavioral outcome studies in the field. Ellen is personally in recovery and integrates lived experience with clinical science and 12-step principles. She teaches practical, compassionate approaches to recovery rooted in biology, behavior, and spirituality. Here's my conversation with Ellen Bennett. Ellen, it is so great to have you here with us today on the Beyond Binge Eating podcast. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's lovely to see you again, Christina.
Yes. So I guess let's start with what was your personal experience with food addiction or binge eating or however you want to describe it. I'd love to hear your personal story before we get into some of the topics that you've worked on academically and professionally.
Sure. I've gotten used to telling my story now,
Okay.
which is really nice. At the beginning, when I first came into this profession, I didn't want to talk about it. There was still carrying quite a lot of shame
Yeah.
involved in it. But although I am a dietitian and I'm working on my doctorate, first and foremost, I do consider myself a food addict. That is what's brought me here.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my food addiction presented in obesity, probably started when I was about 7 or 8, when I was suddenly able to start eating foods that are out of shiny packets. Before that,
Mm,
we had lots of problems with allergens in oils. So I was safeguarded from all of that. And I ate a real food diet, and looking at photos of me before I was about 7 or 8, I was a lovely weight. And then we changed the way that seed oils are processed so that you wouldn't accidentally have nut oils in them. They were more pure. So then suddenly things became safe. And all of the things that my friends could have, I could suddenly have.
mm,
And I went for it. I definitely went for it. Addiction is in the family. Both parents have addictions of one way or the other. Um, but for me, it was mostly weight gain that you could tell from putting on a stone a year as a
how much
child.
is a stone in pounds, do you know,
Oh,
approximately?
14 pounds,
Okay.
14 pounds. And I had this constant mental preoccupation with food. Never really understood it until I moved out of the family home and got a job and things like that, where I perhaps had a bit more space to start thinking
Mm-hmm.
about things.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember before I left home, the doctors were very concerned about my weight. I ended up having hip surgery, both sides,
Wow.
and I was in a wheelchair for a bit. They put me on the commercial weight loss diets, the typical
Mm-hmm.
Weight Watchers, the Slimmers World, and
Mm-hmm.
Slim Fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved them. I thought they were great because they would talk about things like you can have so and so in moderation. Well, that meant nothing to me. So that meant I could have what I felt was moderate, which was quite a,
Yeah.
and I do remember I remember in one of the weight loss groups where they said if you cook chips, and when I say chips, I mean potatoes, like fries, you would call them fries.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
If you cook chips the way they said to cook them, you can have as many as you like. I was like, brilliant, awesome. But I don't think they meant go home, do 3 big baking trays with no baking tray space in between. I was meticulous. And then I carried on and had my dinner. And then a week later, I paid £5 to find out that I'd gained weight. I was like,
Yeah.
still I could have
Yeah.
as many as I liked. So this is not making much sense to me. I remember if things were low fat, you could have as much as you like as well, which was
Mm.
also brilliant because my mum would make rice pudding with skimmed milk and we
Uh,
could put jam in it because that's low fat.
right.
And you could get a low fat yogurt and stick jam in it. Pretty much anything low fat and then stick jam on it was just brilliant. I
Wow.
enjoyed that quite a lot.
Yeah.
But it wasn't working. I wasn't losing weight. And then you'd go to the doctors or the dietitians and they would say, well, she's clearly getting the food from somewhere because she's
Mm,
still gaining weight. So you would have always had this sense of it was my fault. I'm definitely wrong,
right.
that kind of feeling. But in some senses, they were right as well because I was also stealing the food. So when my parents tried to help me out a bit more and restrict my portion sizes, I'd go and steal it or I'd steal
Hmm.
money for food in order to make sure I got that fix. I remember medications. I don't know if you have something called Orlistat in
Oh, yeah. Yes.
yeah, anybody with that reaction knows exactly what I'm talking about. That stuff's not fun, especially if you're in your early 20s and you want to get a boyfriend. That is not
Oh
fun
my gosh.
at all.
I was eating those products, some of those products in my early 20s as well. So I am well aware of
Yeah,
the effects.
very, very quick diarrhea it would give you.
Yeah.
And I do remember I must have been late teens, early 20s, and I don't know if it was new at the time or just new to me, but there was sugar-free chocolate. Chocolate's a big thing
Mm,
for me.
yeah.
There was sugar-free chocolate, and at the local chemist, they had three different flavors for like £5 or something like that. And I remember every week saying, I'll just buy the three and it will last me the week. And I'll make it last me the week. And I kid you not, all three would be gone by the time I got the bus journey home, and it wasn't far. Even though I knew it was going to give me stomach cramps and it was going to hurt all night and I would be on the loo, but I couldn't stop. I just couldn't
Yeah.
stop. I just
Yeah.
kept going. I learned about low carbohydrate approach when I was in my early 20s, very early 20s, and had some success with it. I lost about 6 stone and never understood anything about food addiction at this point. Although I think I started to notice that I thought differently about food than other people that, like I say, I worked with or friends. So I lost about 6 stone, but doctors were telling me I was going to have a heart attack. I had nurses saying it's not good for you, friends and family saying you shouldn't feel deprived, it wouldn't
Mm,
hurt if you have a piece of bread on occasion, have cake at
mm,
Christmas, these sorts of things.
yeah.
Even though I lost weight, was looking better, feeling amazing, at first I could ignore them and go, okay, yeah, yeah, I hear you, but
Yeah.
I'm feeling myself. I feel great. I'm going to carry on. But eventually it wore thin. Um, and I started to reintroduce carbohydrates in the whole sauce, and my weight loss plateaued. And then it was that one day where I reintroduced bread,
Mm,
and I remember I talk about it openly because it's still there, in a bit of a shame way. But I had decided that I'd have a slice of toast for breakfast.
how
Um,
old are you about this time?
Early 20s still.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't learned anything about food addiction or anything. Um, and so I had a piece of toast, and I thought that was quite nice. Went back to the kitchen, decided to have another piece, but there was two slots. So it's a
Hmm.
waste of electricity not to put two pieces of toast in. Yeah, made complete sense to me at the time, Christina. So I put two slices in, went back to the living room, ate those two slices, went back to the kitchen. By now, I've hit the fuck it button. That's it. We're
Right.
going for it now.
Yeah.
I've got two slices in, but it's also a waste of my energy. Just get the toaster, get the butter, get the bread, and sit at the coffee table. And I hadn't had that much wheat in such a long time. I was very, very ill. But after that, I could never get back without understanding the food addiction side of things. I couldn't get
Mm,
back to eating that
hmm.
way. So my weight went straight back up and more. Uh,
Hmm.
so that was really my only successful attempt at dieting. So I wasn't like a yo-yo dieter. I was just more of a
Hmm.
came down once and then yo'd
Yeah.
all the way.
Yod, just one yod.
Just yo'd. um, so I remember Slim Fast, there's shakes and all of those things, and
Yeah.
you'd have two a day and one of their snacks and a meal. I'd eat it all. I'd eat both, drink both shakes and the snack within minutes of each other. So that wasn't going to work for me.
Mm,
Um, if anything, it probably made my addiction worse because of how quickly I got that fix. I didn't have to
mm.
chew. All I had
Yeah.
to do was
Yeah.
swallow, open and swallow. That was it.
Yeah.
So that wasn't helpful to me at all. And then things I moved abroad. I did what lots of addicts do, we call it a geographical. So it's everything else's fault. If I leave, I'll be fine.
Right. Oh, yeah, I get
And
it.
like they say, I went with me, so that didn't work.
Right.
And then things got pretty dark then. I was eating in isolation, in abundance as well. I'd go to the bedroom and I'd turn on my radio so my housemates wouldn't be able to hear all the rappers.
Yeah.
And it would be salty sweet until I'm just
Mm-hmm.
in absolute tears,
Yeah.
swearing that I'm not going to do it again.
Right.
I never had a diagnosis of binge eating. And I think that was because it was back in the day, whereas if you're overweight, you can't have an eating disorder. Things have
Um,
changed a lot now, but that was
uh-huh.
never even brought up. It wasn't even on my radar before I
Mm,
started doing things like this professionally. So I couldn't say whether or not I actually had binge eating disorder or not. But things got pretty dark, and I was losing jobs. I was losing relationships, friendships. I couldn't concentrate on things. I was very unhappy. And truth be told, I got to the suicidal point, and it wasn't
hmm.
pleasant.
Yeah.
Um, I got very loving mum and dad, and I was able to talk to them about this. And they had said, look, there's something called bariatric surgery happening in the UK now. You'd qualify for it. We've asked the doctor, come home and we'll get you that surgery. And I sat long and hard and thought about it. And I remembered all the surgeries I'd had as a child. And that night with conviction, I was like, I don't want to have any more surgery. That is not where I want to go. And then it was all very serendipitous. About a fortnight later, I got introduced to the concept of food addiction, where somebody said to me, instead of trying to moderate chocolate and biscuits, why not just stop completely? Which seems a bit, well, if I could do that, I would have done that. But I was
Right.
trying to moderate. I
Yeah.
couldn't moderate. I just needed
Hmm.
some help over stopping and then just grieving it, never having it again. It wasn't as easy as that at all. It wasn't as easy as that. It took me a few months to get into it, but the first thing that I put down was chocolate. That was about 18 years ago now.
Wow.
And I went to bed absolutely sobbing my heart out. I'm talking tears, snot, the lot. Like if you took a dummy from a child and said, go to bed now, you know, the way they
Yeah.
cry themselves to sleep. That was me. I was so convinced that I was going to die if I didn't eat chocolate. And I went to
Mm.
bed asleep thinking, well, that's it. I'm done. But something beautiful happened the next morning where I woke up and thought, actually, I'm going to die if I keep doing this. I'm going to be heading the route of my dad, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and all of these things.
Yeah.
That was going to be my future. So that's when the grieving process started. And chocolate was one of the first things that I put down. My abstinence, if you like, evolved from that, you know, because my chocolate stopped, but my gummy sweets like Haribo shot up. And then it was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that looks like that's a problem. We need to stop that now as well. And eventually it evolved into how I eat today.
So
Um,
you didn't, so for example, the fact that you stopped the chocolate, but you hadn't thought to stop the Haribo gummies, like, is it because you weren't familiar with the food addiction sort of like standards as they exist today? Or kind of like, how did you decide, okay, I'm not going to eat chocolate, but I will eat gummy bears? Or you're just kind of like, oh, if something comes up as a problem, I'll stop. But like you didn't have in your head like, oh, that the standards are like no sugar or, no flour, stuff like that. I'm just curious.
yeah, I wasn't introduced to the whole no sugar, no flour way of the food addiction. It was more introduced of you gently find your own way.
Yeah.
Uh, And I think if I had the absence that I have today back then, I don't think I would have stuck to it. I think it would have been too much too soon. I think it
Hmm.
needed a gentle approach. I can see the pros of me doing it that way. But it wasn't long before the next thing came on and the next thing came on. If
Hmm.
anything, I'd
Hmm.
had the practice from the chocolate, then the
Yeah.
gummy bears and so on.
Hmm.
So yeah, after about 2 years, I lost 11 stone. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. I think it's 150 pounds, something like
Wow.
that.
Hmm.
And I've maintained that for the last 16 years. I haven't had chocolate for that long, and other things over the years, crisps and biscuits and things like that, that have also come into it. So that weight came off over about 2 years. And I was still getting the message of, this is dangerous for you. You shouldn't eat this way, even though I was eating whole foods, and
So
nutrient
wild.
dense, good foods.
Yeah.
But this time I decided to trust my own experience, what
Yeah.
I was noticing. And
Yeah.
thank you for your advice. You've been heard. I'm not taking that on board today, but
Yeah.
thank you for letting me know,
Yeah.
lovingly. People mean well. Nowadays, people don't say anything. That's just the way Ellen eats. Just let me get on with it, which is nice. And then it was the recession here in UK. I don't know, I think it probably happened everywhere, but it happened in a recession in the UK, and I lost my job. And it was a wonderful opportunity to reinvent myself. Okay, I've got a clean slate here. I'm on benefits. I could go back to college. I could do anything I want right now rather than just get
Hmm.
another job. I went to the drawing board and thought, well, okay, what is it that I want to be? What answers? So what questions do I want answers to? And one of the questions was, why did no dietitian or doctor ever talk to me about food addiction and low carbohydrate? And I thought the best way to answer that would be to become a dietitian and find out why no one told me.
Yeah.
That was my bright idea. But then it turned out that you needed maths and English, and I didn't have any of that. So I had to go to college, get my maths and English, get a
Uh-huh.
piece of paper,
Hmm.
and then my science A levels to be able to become a dietitian. And then started the dietitian's course. I was a very late bloomer academically. So if anybody is feeling like that anybody listens to you, Christina, it is never too late. It is never too late. And then I spent 4 years learning about dietetics. And at the time, you weren't allowed to mention low carbohydrate. That wasn't safe. The evidence wasn't there. Yet I was sitting there living it.
Yeah.
And the reason nobody had ever told me about food addiction is because it didn't exist. So nobody talked about it. So that
Right.
I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah.
And then I went on to work clinically as a dietitian, and working in the community, which I absolutely loved. I worked for an amazing team. I really did enjoy that role. I prefer prevention, so
Hmm.
I did enjoy that role. And some of part of my role was to work with people with obesity. So at this point, I'm still really only thinking this affects people with obesity. I still haven't
Mm.
quite learned
Yeah.
everything, and I'm still learning today.
Yeah.
So I'm noticing patterns in patients that are living with obesity, and it could be things like they don't turn back up for their follow-up appointment,
Mm.
and is it
Hmm.
because everything that I've suggested that they do has worked well, or is it because it hasn't worked well and then they feeling the shame that I used to feel when I went to
Right.
the dietitians of I can't face them because they just think I haven't done it.
Mm.
But I was also following guidance that didn't quite sit right with me. They were not giving them that support when they're telling me I can't just have the one biscuit and things.
Right. Right.
So I asked if we could set up a food addiction support group within the community, um, for the clinic, for the trust that I worked with, and I got back, oh, we can't do that because there's no evidence to suggest that people in the UK have a food addiction problem, and that's not even diagnosable.
Yeah.
So that spurred me on again to go, okay, you've got no evidence, I'll go get your evidence. And serendipitously again, COVID happened, so we couldn't start a support group. But it did mean that I could apply for a researcher's role with the university. And that's how I started to work on the feasibility and acceptability study of Liberate within
Wow.
the
So you
health collaboration.
started, so you went back to school and you started, I'm not sure if it's the same in the UK. Do you start with your master's and then it goes to your doctorate, or it's just a
Straight to
doctorate
the
program?
doctorate. Yeah.
Okay.
There
Amazing.
is the option to do it that way, but
But you just did the
but I
doctorate.
I went straight to the doctorate. Yeah. And so that's been the journey so far. I've learned so much more since, of course, the main bit being the amount of people that I've helped so far that are a healthy weight or just a little bit overweight.
Yeah.
So that's been a big eye opener for me,
Right.
a very humbling experience to see that as well. Um, and really, really enjoyed the research to the point that I'm just coming to the end of the doctorate now. I definitely have ideas of more things to do.
Oh, really? Well, will you share with us maybe a little bit later in our chat? Will you share what your
And do.
some of these ideas? Okay.
Mhm.
Um, so that's amazing. That is really cool that you're like, well, if you're telling me that there's not this evidence and yet this is my lived experience, let me get you the evidence. So you literally just like get your PhD. That's amazing. And also along the way, you created a program called Liberate. So I'm wondering, and that is part of what you've been studying as well as doing other research in food addiction, which we'll get into. And I'm wondering, the Liberate program, what does it actually involve? And for example, how is it different from a typical diet or weight loss program?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wrote Liberate whilst I was working clinically. It wasn't called Liberate then. It had a really long title. And it was very long in weeks as well. So, but I wrote it with the intention of bringing it into the NHS as that food addiction support.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the way it differs, well, for starters, we don't even talk about weight. So we consider that none of our business.
Yeah,
Mainly because a lot of us can be just as obsessive on the scales as we are about the food. It's like tracking foods as well.
yeah.
And if you ever
Mhm.
done that in the past, I remember when I was allowed something like 1,800 calories a day, and I was 7 short. And I was trying to look for those 7 because I was owed those 7, and I knew I couldn't carry it over. And I will find a piece of celery that will allow this. Oh God, it was so obsessive. But the scales were just as bad. And I could be on the scales 10 times a day. So we don't even talk about it in terms of weight loss. It's also not about the food either. It kind of starts off about the food, then it really isn't about the food. It's food is what we use to cope with life. So we need to figure out ways to other ways, safer ways to cope with things that happen in life when life starts lifing. Yeah. So Liberate is an addiction-informed educational program. So we have at the start, we talk about how it is that we're feeling over that week, how we're feeling about the way we've eaten, or about the things that have come up, and then the thoughts around food, depending on what's come up. Um, and then the group support each other. All right. So really, myself and the health coaches are there to facilitate. Okay, not there to fix. That's not our role. We don't want to create any kind of codependence. This is to become dependent upon ourselves and start trusting the way we feel.
Mm.
So we start off the sessions like that. Then we bring in the science, and we could see from the feedback in the study, the acceptability part of the study, that was what people really enjoyed. People could get to a point of just accepting that this is the way they are, but really they would like to know why, what's going on in the brain. So
Mm.
that was fairly unanimous that people really enjoyed the science when they finally understood what we can't see is going on up here. They
Yeah.
can start being more forgiving toward themselves, more compassionate to themselves. Their stress levels are going down because they're going, it's my addiction again. It's okay. I can work on this for the next meal, not the next Monday, not the next month, not the next supermoon, 1st of January, next meal. Yeah. And we just get back on that wagon. So that's what Liberate does, and it runs monthly live.
How
Um,
long is the program? Is it how
it's
long?
8 weeks, 8
8 weeks.
weeks, but and lots of people forget that this next bit. They go, oh, it's just 8 weeks, and they get into it and they think there's no more support. No, because addiction, in all addictions, when you look at the alcohol literature, the drug literature, which has been used to inform Liberate, um, we can see that support, ongoing support, is 50% of it. It's so important, so important. So I couldn't, with a good heart, say 8 weeks and then you're off on your own. After many decades, some of us have been going through this for many decades
Yeah.
of that kind of programming, expect it to be undone within 8 weeks. No, it just doesn't work that way. So within 8 weeks, you also get an entire year of 4 hours a week live support, and then the option to subscribe monthly after that year. So it's there all the time. And we have a WhatsApp group where you can phone each other if you want to, you can message each other. And we have different types of prompts just to get the brain thinking just a little bit differently and away from maybe looking for answers in the fridge, which I still open the fridge, close the fridge. I laugh about it now. There's nothing in there. I know damn well there's nothing in there, but there's still that reaction. Open the cupboard, close the cupboard. The answer to the overwhelm of my email inbox is not in the fridge, but the action is still there. So that's what Liberate does. There's also a pre-recorded version, which we've only just started off. So if people can't make the timed live version, the pre-record's there, but there's still access to the support, the live support 4 hours a week, 4 times a week for an hour, and the WhatsApp group as well. The support part is so important.
That's wonderful. And so when you studied Liberate, what did you find regarding whether the program was workable? And also, it seemed like there was some interesting, I'd love to hear just like the findings in general, especially how this is primarily focused on food addiction, but then what did you find about binge eating? Because you looked at that as well.
Yeah, we did. So it was a feasibility and acceptability study. So really it was to see, is it feasible to deliver this online? And do people find it acceptable to have it online and what it is that they're learning? But it was definitely feasible. We had lots of people, mainly from the UK, but there were some international people there as well. We measured the Yale Food Addiction 2.0, so the YFAS scale. We measured CRAVED, which is a screening tool, which we must talk about in a moment, Christina.
Okay.
Make that. And so we measured those two. Now, because I hope that someday this will be in the NHS, they also like numbers, weight loss and BMI. So I included that for those. It's not something that we focus on, but for that we put that into for our findings as well. So we wanted to measure the addiction severity, whether or not that changed. We did that through YFAS and CRAVED. It was important to me that if we were to see a reduction in these, which is what we would have liked to have seen, to see that Liberate was effective by reducing the severity of people's food addiction symptoms. What I also wanted to know, were people happy about it afterwards? There's no point in having those reduced, but then people are just unhappy. In alcoholic recovery, we call that type of person a dry drunk. So they are not drinking, but they are miserable and they are unhappy and they can't see the joy in the world. I wouldn't want that to have come from anything I've made. I definitely wouldn't want that. So we also measured their Warwickshire and Edinburgh mental well-being scale to make sure that people weren't becoming unhappy whilst their addiction scores were changing in either direction. The other thing we wanted to measure was the binge eating. And that was because at this point I started speaking to other people that worked in this field clinically. And what I was getting a lot of is in the eating disorders community is that if we ask people to not have carbohydrates or fully abstain from a trigger food, we run the risk of creating an eating disorder episode. But I wasn't seeing that clinically. It wasn't something I was seeing. So I reached out to other professionals around the world to ask whether or not, is this something you see in your practice? So do you go moderation rather than abstinence? But it wasn't just me that was noticing this.
And these are the people you were asking were people in the food addiction realm who were
suggesting abstinence.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just me that was noticing this clinically, but we thought this was a good opportunity to record it because also, I don't want to make people unhappy, but I don't want to give people binge eating episodes either. Right. So let's be sure that this is safe.
Yeah.
So we put in the binge eating scale to be sure that we were practicing safely.
Yeah.
After the 8 weeks, what we saw was a huge reduction. I think it was about 46% for the YFAS and CRAVED, right? So some people at the very top, the severe end of food addiction, came out as no food addiction at all. So the symptoms had really come down. That was
Yeah.
after 8 weeks. The, the 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 person that the researcher in me goes, yeah, but that's 8 weeks, and you're researcher led, and anybody can do anything for 8 weeks, yada yada. What we found 6 months later is that continued whether they access support or not. So that changed.
Wow.
But that continued. There was a very slight uptick, but it wasn't significant at all. And then the most interesting part was the 44% reduction of binge eating symptoms. So we could see this now, that
Yeah.
actually this was supporting people with binge eating symptoms as well. And it's important to note that we don't know whether or not they had a binge eating diagnosis. That wasn't part of the protocol. We were just measuring the symptoms through the scale. So we saw that there was a reduction, but they were excluding a food group and they were abstaining. So that opens doors for more conversation within the research area of
Right.
maybe not one size does fit all. And if we're going to be giving our patients informed choices, they need to know all the choices that are on the table. Maybe some people would feel comfortable with an abstinence approach rather than a moderation approach. I remember one lady that I interviewed. Oh, my heart still hurts for her whenever I think about her. Had gone to eating disorders clinics for many years into um, uh, like rehabilitation. I forget what they call them now,
Hmm.
but units where they stay there for a couple of weeks. And she was only allowed to be discharged if she could demonstrate that she could eat some certain foods in moderation. And she knew it
Yeah.
was going to send her off, but she had to do it. And this woman, a lot older than me, and she was in tears just reliving those experiences.
Mm.
So when she found that there was a way to be abstinent from these foods and still have a healthy, whole foods, nourishing diet, it was almost a relief for her. Not
Absolutely.
scary grieving process. It was a relief.
I mean, I love this research so much. I mean, I think it's so awesome that you and your co-authors have written this paper and just shown that that an abstinence-based approach can be helpful for binge eating sometimes. And I'm for the people who are listening or watching, I'm pulling up right now changes in binge eating symptoms following an online community-based ultra processed food addiction intervention, Liberate. Um, this is a paper that I'm just taking a peek at right now. This was published super, super recently. It was
Mm.
published, yeah, the 21st of May, 2026. Um, and I'm just going to read a tiny bit from this because I think it's just really awesome. These findings challenge assumptions that carbohydrate reduction exacerbates disordered eating and suggest that abstinence-based dietary strategies, when embedded within a psychologically supportive framework, such as Liberate, that it may be beneficial for some individuals who, binge eat and have ultra-processed food addiction. Says here. Um, Although Liberate was developed to support adults with self-reported food addiction, it's not about treating binge eating specifically. The overlap between ultra-processed food addiction and binge eating made it clinically important to examine these changes. As you were saying, you were curious, wanted to make sure that you were doing no harm. Um, the overlapping pattern with other substance-related disorders has some researchers and clinicians to propose implementing addiction recovery frameworks. Um, and while ultra-processed food addiction and binge eating disorders share many neurological and behavioral mechanisms, each also has unique aspects that indicate that they are not synonymous. But traditional eating disorder treatment paradigms caution against the exclusion of food groups, such as, limiting carbohydrates, because they think that this restriction is going to increase the binging and reinforce the disordered eating. Um, but like some of that guidance is involving like super low calorie or like really crazy protocols, or don't have psychoeducation, or are not emphasizing real satiating foods, don't maybe they don't include enough protein and fat for whatever, maybe they're calorie deficient, maybe they are truly nutritionally restrictive, or it's just not in a supportive way. However, you pointed out that it's possible that low carbohydrate diets are stabilizing for blood glucose. They can reduce hunger and cravings, actually, which sounds like that doesn't make any sense, but it actually can reduce hunger and cravings and promote satiety. And all of those are related to lower binge urges. And, a whole bunch of other benefits, which, the emerging research in metabolic psychiatry showing the link between metabolic health and mental health, that, people can increase their mood, a lot of helpful benefits. And so,
Yeah, on the note of the mood, I
ah,
forgot to mention, but
yeah,
as I said, it was important to me to make sure that people were still happy after they did this. And for a clinical community group, you need for it to be significant in that scale. It's the Web scale. You need a 3-point increase to say that it's made a beneficial difference within the community. We found a 6-point increase, so double what was
wow.
needed. So people were actually happy with themselves and the way things were. And that was sustained as well 6 months later. But
That
that
is
binge eating
awesome.
paper, it's very recent because initially the feasibility study, when we saw such a reduction in binge eating, we had the opportunity to publish that data there and then. But we knew that when we were going to say this, it was potentially going to rock the boat a bit. So we
Yeah.
wanted to be really sure of what we were saying. So we held that data back, got an amended ethics on the original study to say, can we combine cohorts to make sure that we've got bigger numbers to really
Mm,
sure we know what we're saying before we say it? And that's
yeah.
why it came out as a second paper with higher numbers.
Well,
And that those kind of figures have sustained with subsequent Liberate cohorts as well. So it wasn't just a one-off for the feasibility and
yeah.
then another one-off for the second
Yeah.
cohort. We've
Yeah.
continued that going forward. So there's something there. There's something
Yeah.
there that would just be good just to be discussed rather than just blanket moderation for everybody.
I love that so much. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's just completely paradigm shattering to say that, oh, it is possible that doing something quote unquote restrictive can actually be helpful for binge eating. But, that's just yeah, so I mean that challenges that. And also I think it begs a perspective change of like, is it I heard this in somewhere, I can't remember who was saying it, but is it really restrictive or is it actually liberating? Which is funny, your program is called Liberate, but it's like in
Yeah.
a sense to, free yourself from certain things or make fuel changes can actually be liberating, so not restrictive. Ellen, tell us about Craved.
Crave, well done for remembering. So Crave was written by Dr. Jen Unwin and Heidi Yeaver a few years ago now. I can't quite remember when it was, but it's 6 questions. And the reason it was written is because what was available then was the YFAS scale. If you've ever
Hmm.
used that, it's about 35 questions. It is a pain to be able to score. And if
Yeah.
you're working clinically, so for example, I could have, as a dietitian, 15 to 30 minutes with a patient, right? I haven't got time to them answer all those questions, then me to score it. It's not as easy as yes or no. Doctors, GPs, they have even less time, between 7 and 10 minutes, right, to do an efficient consultation with somebody. So a screening tool needed to be developed, and Jen saw this gap and filled it. So they've taken the ICD-10, which is like your DSM. It's from the WHO. I can't remember what all the acronyms mean, but anyhow, it's there, right? They took the ICD-10 addiction criteria and mapped it over to food. All right. So that they could then perhaps say, let's look at this as a screening tool so that we can decide whether or not a conversation should be had on food addiction. So they took those criteria and developed 6 questions. 3 or more yeses is suggestive of let's have a conversation about food addiction. We can start this approach. Now, only just now, we went through all the statistical programs to get CRAVED validated. All right, so that it's gone through all the analysis to make sure that it is validated and it is measuring what it says it's measuring against the binge eating scale and against the Yale food addiction scale to be sure that we're actually measuring more food addiction, not just binge eating, because that's another argument within the research communities that we're just relabeling binge eating, but we can see that there is a difference here. So we have just gone through all that, written the paper up, and that has just gone through peer review, and it will be published hopefully any week now.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, Dr. Jen Unwin and Heidi Yeager have done a really good job on that, because now anybody that's working clinically or anybody at home could just go through those questions, simple yes or no, and then go, actually, maybe that this is the path I need to take for now. And
I love that.
And I have used this on people, the screening tool, and there is a really big difference. I remember working with somebody who contacted me for weight loss advice, and I started asking these simple questions. I've got them up here actually. Sure. So, for example, the first question: have you ever had such a strong desire or sense of compulsion at the thought of eating whichever foods they decide are problematic, that you couldn't resist the urge to eat them? And I remember them being on the video call and they were going, no, okay. Have you ever noticed that you need an increasing amount of these foods to get the same effect? And they're like, no, not really. I'm thinking, definitely don't need the rest of these questions. They're completely baffled. But the majority of the people that I work with, that they know what they're coming in for straight away. It's yes,
Yeah, right.
Definitely yes, sometimes, but definitely a yes for that one. So it does filter people out really quite quickly when you're in a clinical setting, to be able to don't need to talk to them about food addiction. They clearly just don't understand how to eat well to lose weight. I can help them with that. Whereas other people come in, they're answering yes to near enough all of these questions. They can tell me better than I know as a dietitian how to eat well, but they can't do it. I just can't do it. So then we take the conversation in a completely different direction.
That's so cool that there's a screening tool that is so easy, because I'm aware of the Wi-Fi's. It's really, really tough to grade. And the fact that CRAVED has achieved, been shown to be validated, that makes such a difference that people can actually use it in research. So that's great that it's both easy to implement and it is now validated. So amazing. Yeah. Ellen, why do you think food addiction needs to be talked about more when supporting people with type 2 diabetes?
Wow, that was based on a study that came out beginning this year, and I ended up writing a paper with Dr. David Unwin and Dr. Cynthia Myers-Morrison on your side of the world, and we did it all online. It was great, but
and by the way, Dr. Unwin, people who don't know, Dr. David Unwin is like a premier GP in the realm of low carbohydrate diets and for reversal of type 2 diabetes.
Yes, absolutely. He's the granddad of it all. He's amazing and absolutely, truly lovely, humble man as well. But we got together to write a perspective piece on this paper that came out that explained that 1 in 3 people with type 2 diabetes potentially are experiencing food addiction. In other words, they're getting the leaflets from the doctors. They're being told what foods they should and shouldn't eat. And yet they're coming back every 3 months and their HbA1c keeps going up. But they've got all the information. What's going on? No one's asking, okay, you've got all this information. What's actually causing the problem for you following this? They're just, let's put you another medicine, and until we get to insulin, and then we'll just keep putting the insulin up. So we got together to write a bit of a roadmap, if you like, for clinicians to say, if you're starting to see this in some of your type 2 diabetics, this is how you could start working with them, following a different path rather than just giving that generic advice out and increasing medications. It does touch on medications. And that was more David's side of the paper, but it talks more about food addiction and, of course, CRAVED, how to screen for it, and support groups that they could be signposted to. And it really went into depth about how following up these patients is important. Leaving it too long, then they will just drift off. So keeping it every month helps them keep accountable as well. So it's quite a high amount of people with type 2 diabetes. If you're one of those and you understand what the doctor's asking you, but you just can't seem to follow it, it could be that you need that more psychological support and that peer support from people that understand when things get tough, you can hear the answer in the fridge or
Hmm.
the petrol station or the
Right.
kids' lunchbox or
Yeah.
these
But
sorts of
isn't
things. Other people that understand that.
is part of the, so you're saying that when GPs oftentimes are working with their patients and they just like give this leaflet, but they're not really providing resources to psychological support or, things like that. But part of the problem isn't part of the problem also. I mean, I know Dr. Unwin is really unique in that he does, he can work with clients or patients with this low carbohydrate approach, but isn't also the problem that a lot of the GPs are promoting moderation, right? Aren't most GPs who are working with type 2 diabetics, giving them a leaflet saying you need to moderate your carbohydrates, just you. Um, I remember, as a personal trainer, and I saw the food plan for one of my type 2 diabetic clients, and it was like, a cup of rice in the morning, a cup of, like a half a cup of, sweet potato in the midday, and something. It was like just like a moderate amount of carbohydrates throughout the day with an appropriate amount of insulin, right? But if the type 2 diabetic does have food addiction, would you consider that maybe that not only they might need like the psychological aspect, but the approach needs to be completely different?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If they've got food addiction, especially if they're in the more severe chronic end of things, I would be looking at what is their first and foremost problematic foods before even thinking about low carb. Let's get a really good foundation on how we can get hour by hour, day by day, not having those trigger foods, those red foods, those drug foods, alcoholic foods, however you want to word it. Let's
Yeah.
get that foundation first. And that's where I'd work with the doctors to make sure that with the amounts of carbohydrates that they're still eating, they have the right amount of support, even if it's medication, for that at that time. If they feel that they could do both approaches at once, where they feel they're in a stable place to be able to go lower carb straight away, as putting down their drug foods with lots of support. This is it. So important having that support, even if it's giving them a call once a week, checking in, see how they are. Um, then I would support them. But it's also though, I couldn't give you like one answer for that, Christina, because it would be meeting them where they are. If
Yeah.
someone comes to me and says, I can never have chocolate again, or what was it, gummy bears? We talked about gummy bears, but I'm okay with biscuits and cake. Okay, let's just start with the
Yeah.
chocolate and the gummy
Yeah.
bears. Meet them where they are. With me and my addiction, if you push me too much, I dig my heels in and I would do the opposite for months of
Mm.
my own detriment.
Hmm.
So meet people. I would be meeting people where they are with that, and helping manage their HbA1c with medicine
Hmm.
if needed until they're ready. Uh, yeah, that's how I'd be doing it.
I'd love to hear about some of your future dreams. I know at the beginning of our conversation, you said, oh, there's a whole bunch more things that I want to, I don't know if you said research or contribute or I don't know, but I'm just wondering, can you fill us in a little bit about what's next or what you would want to be next or, any of these
Uh-huh.
fun ideas?
Well, I'm coming to the end of a 5-year plan, and this is where people go, "What's your next 5-year plan?" I like to say, well, I'm having a year to reflect on my last 5-year plan and just enjoy rather than just speed on to the next thing. But I do have some things that I would like to put out there research wise. I would like to. Uh, so one thing that I get back from dietitians is that uh, having people on low carbohydrate or people who are abstaining from their drug foods, which are predominantly ultra processed foods with no nutrient value. It makes no sense that we even push people to moderate. But anyhow, one of the pushbacks I get is that maybe they will become clinically deficient in certain vitamins and minerals. So what I would like to do, but I haven't spoken to the Liberate cohort about this, but maybe get a food plan of a few people that have been established in their recovery, quite
Mhm.
stable within their recovery for a year or plus, and actually measure that and write out all the macronutrients and then write that
Mhm.
up. Because I do think
Mhm.
that if people are eating a whole foods diet, even without the carbohydrates, I don't think we'll be seeing a deficiency, but it would be good to see. It'd be good to get that out there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, my ultimate dream would be to have some sort of retreat or rehabilitation center. That would be my ultimate dream.
Mm.
I remember talking about it years ago. Um, years and years ago. The way I thought about it then, it's very different now, but the way I thought about it then is that I just want a house with 10 rooms. That's all I want. A house with 10 rooms. Who doesn't? And one of those rooms would be for me. Six of those rooms would be for people who could afford to pay 1 1/3 of what the retreat would be worth. And three of the rooms would be for people like me in the past who've been on low income. They would never be able to afford something like that. And those
Yeah.
extra bits that the
Yeah.
other six have paid would pay for their room.
Yeah.
And people would come and we would stay together and we would cook together, go through withdrawal together, go through the irritability together. Um, it would be somewhere out in the sticks, and there would be people that would do yoga and massage, saunas,
Yeah.
steams, cold baths, things like this,
Mhm.
um, to help people get on track. But what would be important about it is that it wouldn't be too far away from real life. Because part of their visit there would be, now we're going to go to a shop. Because in
Mhm.
reality, you don't
Mhm.
get to have a massage every day and a sauna every day. You've got to
Mhm.
face life. So it would be more about reintegration
Mhm.
into to let's go shopping together. Let's see
Mhm.
what aisles are going to call to us.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can avoid that aisle today. Let's see how our body feels when we walk down that aisle, and we do it all
Yeah.
together in that safe space. That would be an absolutely amazing dream to have. And if I could do something like that in a hot country,
In a what country?
in a hot
Hot.
country,
Like war.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm a sun goddess. I want the sun.
Uh-huh.
That's what I would like to do. So for work wise, that would be my next plan, and I would still like for Liberate to get into the NHS. So a diagnosis of food addiction is what we would need next.
Hmm.
Um, but here in the UK, we have the NHS where we don't pay for every time we go to the doctors, and I just feel that people here they deserve to know this stuff through the NHS, at least to have that information. Then they can do what they like with it. Just have
Yeah.
that information as an option, as a way to manage the way that they think about food, which could be all the time, because I know that's how it was for me.
Ellen, it's been such a delight to have you here today, and I just love the research you've done. And it's just absolutely amazing that your own life experience led to you actually becoming a registered dietitian and starting this Liberate program and doing incredibly groundbreaking research. And it's just absolutely awesome. If someone, where's the best way to get a hold of you or become part of the Liberate program?
Ah, if you go to the website, it is www.liberatetoday.org, and there's a contact form on there that will come straight to me. We also every month we do a live webinar a couple of weeks before we start our live course. And the webinar lasts about half an hour, 45 minutes, but it's run by myself or some health coaches, or our health coaches, where it is live. We give you the information at the end. You can ask us your questions as well. And which it's great when people do ask questions, because then we get in the chat box, oh, I was wondering that too. So those questions end up helping other people as well. But you get to find out a bit more information for yourself and your situation to see if it would help.
Thank you so much, Ellen,
Thank you very much. It's been lovely talking to you.
and lovely talking to you too.